Earlier, I already said about online classes, especially recorded classes, to use the time so that we can complete the syllabus on time. So here, the next chapter, chapter number 4, it's all about animal kingdom. So I'm going to start the lesson, and here are some of the characteristics of the Animalia kingdom. We already know that we have 5 kingdoms: Monera, Protista, Fungi, Plantae, and Animalia. So Animalia is the more advanced organisms. That means a group consisting of organisms having more advanced characteristics compared to the lower organisms like Monera, Protista, Fungi, Plantae. So here are some of the characteristic features of Animalia. So we already know that the Animalia, they are eukaryotic in nature, and the difference is that with the plant cell is that they don't have any cell wall. Like in the offline classes, I already said that cell wall is the main characteristic feature of Plantae, Fungi, and Monera. But this cell wall is absent in Animalia group. And most of the organisms are heterotrophic in nature. They don't prepare their own food material, and the type of nutrition is called holozoic. Holozoic means ingestion of food. Ingestion of food means taking the food into the mouth. So that means they have a more advanced mouth, sometimes primitive gullet, and sometimes they have more advanced mouth to take food into the body. And of course, animalia, most of the organisms in the animal kingdom are motile in nature. And in this lecture, there are certain features we should consider, like to classify the animal kingdom, like these: how the cells are arranged, how the symmetry of the body is present, nature of coelom, which I'll explain it to you, and the pattern of digestive, circulatory system, and reproductive system. So let's move into the classification of animal kingdom. Now looking at this, you can see all the animals under the animal kingdom can be divided into two major phylum. You already know that during the hierarchical classification, we already know that kingdom have number of phylums or divisions. Phylum have number of classes. Number of classes have orders. Number of orders have family, and family does consisting of number of genus. Genus consisting of species. So if you can see in animal kingdom, there are two major um, subcategories. Some of them are called non-chordates and some of them are called chordates. Under non-chordates, you can see there are many phylums starting from Porifera, Cnidaria, you can see platyhelminths, nematodes, Annelida, Arthropoda, Mollusca, and Echinodermata. So these are all categories had been divided into different categories based on the type of characteristics they hold. You can see the other categorization called chordate or chordator have classes. You can see subclasses: fishes, frogs, snakes, birds, and all the mammals coming under a class called Mammalia. Okay, so it is not blindly divided, but based on some features, which we're going to learn in this class. Let's move to the characteristics that are used, or the basis of classification depends on number of characteristics. Let's see what are those. Basically, animal kingdom is classified based on levels of organization. You already know that there is a levels of organization. Cells become tissues, tissues become organs, organs become organ system, number of organ system to give to produce, not produce, to be included in a single body called organism, right? So now you can see most of the poriferans, like I said, now here porifera, you see, cellular level organization. So most of the poriferans have, which we commonly call them as sponges, have only cell level organization. That means the body is made up of cells only. Okay, and you can see there is another category called coelenterids. Their body is made up until the level of tissues. That means they don't have any organ system or they don't have organs. But the body of these organisms belonging to coelenterids have tissue level of organization. And you can see there are some other groups like platyhelminths and other higher, like you can see right over here, organ and organ system level of organization have all these platyhelminths, nematodes, annelida, arthropoda, mollusca, and echinodermata. All of them have organ and organ system level of organization. So animals are being classified based on the level of organization. Some of them are cellular level, some of them are tissue level organization, and some of them are more than tissue level, like organ and organ system level of organization. You can see Annelida, Arthropoda, Mollusca, Echinodermata, and the phylum called Chordates all have organ system level of organization. That means you can see, if you take, we all belong to a phylum called Chordata. We have systems, right? Digestive system, reproductive system, circulatory system. So we are complex compared to the lower or groups called sponges or coelenterids. Fine. So this is the textbook part of the explanation, you can say. Okay, let's move to the next one. So this is number one, level of organization in the organism. So we are discussing about what are the criteria used to classify animal kingdom. Now here comes the symmetry. How symmetry is useful? Just a minute. How the symmetry is useful? You can see right over here how organisms can be divisible into different parts. Look at this. Looking at the diagram only, you can say some of the organisms are asymmetrical in nature and some of them are radial symmetry. They show radial symmetry, and some of the organisms are bilaterally symmetrical in nature. It's like cutting a cake. Let's see how symmetry play important role in classifying the organisms. You can see asymmetrical organisms are the organisms. If you take a knife, just imagine, take a knife and try to cut the organism by touching the center. If it is not divided into equal halves, then we call that kind of body structure as asymmetrical in nature. You're getting my point? I hope you can see. Now this is one of the type called sponges, a poriferan animal, in which if you take a knife and try to cut them into two equal halves, if they are not becoming two equal halves, then you can consider it as a asymmetrical body. And here comes the radial symmetry. Looking at this, you can see when any plane, take a knife, cut them in such a way that it should touch the center of the body of the organism. So passing through the central axis of the body, and it can divide the organism into two identical halves. So this is called radial symmetry. So you can see the organisms like coelenterids, ctenopods, and echinodermata organisms. That means these groups containing organisms they show radial symmetry. Where simple, when we cut the organism by touching the center of the body of the organism, and if it can divide into two equal halves, two identical halves, then we can call them as radial symmetrical organism. And the last one, bilateral symmetry, where the body can be divided into two identical left and right halves by cutting them with only one plane. Looking at this, you can see if you can able to cut the organism into left and right part by touching the center, and you will get left and right part by only one plane. So it's not that many planes. Like you can see in the radial symmetry, no matter whatever the plane, turn the organism into different postures and then cut them, you can get two equal halves. But it's not like that in bilateral symmetry. Bilateral symmetry means you need to cut the body touching the center only one time, then only you'll get left and right part. If you take another plane, then you'll not get the right and left part of the body. Even humans come under bilateral symmetry. You can see they have given our examples. These are all examples I have taken from the textbook, annelida and arthropods. So symmetry plays a crucial role in classifying the organisms. And here comes the next one. Body development, germ layers. You can note it down. Germ layer, it's like, I'll tell you in a clear way. Now look at this. This is a zygote undergone cell division. You already know that zygote is a single cell. Soon after the fusion of male and female gamete, zygote is formed. This zygote will undergo so many cell divisions. We can call in biology as cleavage. So instead of writing divisions, you can write cleavage, division, same synonyms. So zygote undergoes so many mitotic divisions, which led to the formation of a mass of cells. You can see this zygote is not having a single cell but many cells. So at one particular time after the division, the whole zygote looked like this, having three tiers, T-I-E-R, three divisions. One is called ectoderm, the outermost part of the embryo, which we call the embryo. Many cells occupy the outermost part, is called an ectoderm, and the middle part of the embryo have mesoderm, and the innermost part is, we can call them as endoderm. Like I said, ecto, meso, endoderm representing outer, middle and innermost part of anything. Now, what is the purpose of these germ layers? Ectoderm, mesoderm and endoderm. Now, what happens is, soon after the cleavage, the embryo start developing into a body of an organism. Now, looking at this picture, you can understand. You can see zygote divided into many cells. You can see ectoderm, mesoderm and endoderm. So these cells start developing into different parts of the body. You can see ectoderm divides into, ectoderm further differentiate. You can use a term called differentiate into skin cells, nerves and pigment cells. Same way, mesoderm can form heart, skeletal muscles, the muscles what we have, kidney parts, RBC and smooth muscle cells in the stomach. All of them are derived from mesodermal layer. And endoderm can form a different type of organs in the body. So you can say that zygote undergoes so many cleavages, develop into embryo. Embryo can be distinguished into three distinct germ layers. Each germ layer develop into different body parts of an organism. So based on that, you can say, sometimes some group of organisms in the during the classification, some of them are diploblastic organisms. What do you mean by diploblastic? If the body of that particular organism belonging to a specific group made up of ectoderm and endoderm, di. So that means the group consisting of animals having their zygote having only two germ layers, diploblastic, ectoderm and endoderm. And here are the examples, coelentrates. And sometime, like if the zygote is having three germ layers, ecto, endo and mesoderms, you can see they have given, they're called as a triploblastic animals. See, all the way from platyhelminths till the chordates have three germ layers. What are those? Ecto, meso and endoderm. That means, take an example of human beings. We belong to chordates. When we are in the zygote form, our embryo have three germ layers, ecto, meso and endoderm. So that's why we belong to a category called diploblastic animals. Fine. Let's move to the next categorization. Sorry, the criteria used to divide the animal kingdom. Here, there is one thing called coelom. Remember, it is not coelom, but you should call it as a coelom. Coelom means having a body cavity. Coelom is nothing but cavity. So, like we already know that cavity means an empty space. Now, based on the presence and absence of the body cavity, we can divide or organisms can be divided into three major categories. What are those? Acoelomates, pseudocoelomates, and coelomates. That means if we cut the body of that organism, if we find cavity inside between body wall and the gut wall, then we call it as coelomate organisms. Acoelomate, like you can say A, absence. That means in these organisms, when you cut open, you don't find cavity between body wall and the gut. But there is a third category called pseudocoelomates. Pseudo means false. That means they have a false cavity. You can see in some animals the body cavity is not lined by mesoderm. Looking at, you can see this is a pseudocoelom. That means false cavity being present. So let's continue this. Instead, the mesoderm is present as a scattered pouches. So we already know that there are three germ layers: ecto, meso, and endoderm. So in these organisms like ash helminths, what happens now? The mesoderm will become as a pouches, like a bag-like structures, leaving a false cavity inside. Such body cavity is called pseudocoelom. But whereas you can see these are the coelomate organisms having a genuine true coelom, that means cavity being present. And you can see there is no cavity present between the body wall and the gut, and that's why we call them as acoelomate. Try to understand and analyze the diagrammatic representation of cavity. So that's why coelom, having coelom or not having coelom cavity between body wall. Gut means digestive system. Remember, gut wall means digestive system. So there are three different types of organisms: coeloms, pseudocoeloms, and acoelomate organisms. You can see right over here some of the examples. Pseudocoelom, coelomate organisms having a cavity here, and acoelomates don't have any cavity between the body wall and the gut. Next comes the presence of notochord. Notochord is mesodermal. You already heard ecto, mesoderm, and endoderm. So that means a kind of a structure, a string-like structure, which is formed from mesodermal germ layer on the dorsal side. I mean, like suppose if you take human body on our back, you can say dorsal side during the embryonic development in some animals. Having notochord and not having notochord makes the differences. Animals with notochord are called chordates, and those without having the notochord are called non-chordates. So you can consider these organisms, which one here you can see. That's why you call non-chordates and chordates. Non-chordate means the dorsal part of the body don't have a notochord. Then all of them come under a category called non-chordates. You can call invertebrates. Same way, if the body contain notochord, then they are coming under a category called chordates, and it is covered by vertebral column. So we can consider cord. Having cord means it can replace as a spinal cord. Notochord can become as a spinal cord, and if the spinal cord is protected by vertebral column, you already know that vertebral column common name is backbone. All the way runs from your neck to the hip region. So any organisms having vertebral column, we can call them as vertebrates. Without having vertebral column, they're called invertebrates. So try to understand these organisms which don't have a notochord. Obviously, they'll not have any vertebral column or backbone. Those organisms having notochord makes them have a vertebral column also. All the organisms, that means all the way from, you can see right over here, all the way from you can see chordates starting from fishes, amphibians, reptiles, aves, mammals, all of them have notochord protected by vertebral column. And the last important criterion used to divide the animals is segmentation, body segmentation. That means body surface is divided into many number of segments, serial repetitions. Like earthworm, you can see earthworm body is not smooth. The body is divisible into many small parts. This kind of arrangement is called segmentation, or you can call metamerism. Very important one mark question. So the whole body dividing into small segments, that kind of body is called metameric segmentation, and having that kind of thing is called metamerism. Okay, fine. So this is all the different criteria used to classify the animal kingdom. Number one, we already started with levels of organization. Number two, symmetry. Number three, germ layer. Number four, coelom. And number five, presence and absence of notochord. Number six, segmentation, body dividing into many segments.